There we go. Okay. I don't know what happened. So let's continue. So we're on page 24, we're on chapter 24. The fact that this trait, fear of sin, is placed in this order after all the preceding traits should alert us that it must be pretty difficult to obtain. The Ramchal's conclusion cannot be avoided. We might not think that fear of sin is elementary, and indeed was this not the topic of watchfulness, the very first step in the ladder of spirituality, and the discussion of watchfulness, which is self-awareness. The emphasis was on the need to take all possible precautions to not inadvertently transgress Torah law. Why then does fear of sin appear so late in the scheme, which indicates that we must have already mastered the 7 preceding traits? The answer can only be that there are degrees and variations in fear of sin, which is rather primitive, while others require much greater spiritual preparation. And we saw this again and again, right? When it came to cleaning up our side of the street and kind of all of these areas, that there was that initial area where you're doing it, for reward or out of fear of punishment, and like a very juvenile, here's your sticker chart or time out kind of framework. And as we developed and grew up spiritually, so also in terms of sin and our perception of sin, also we have to grow up, right? It's not like just calories in, calories out mentality, right? As you grow up, you're like, there's hormones and sleep and all kinds of complications, right? It's not just stop eating. So it's also not just, be afraid of punishment. So there are 2 different types of fear. The second is again subdivided into 2. So the first type is easy to attain, while the second is quite difficult and its perfection is of a very high order. The first type is fear of punitive consequences resulting from sin, like we said, right? Fear of timeout, fear of a patch, fear of something unpleasant consequence. This means a person fears harmful consequences of sin. If they're going to be against the body or against the soul, every person loves yourself and every person doesn't want to experience bad consequences. Therefore, we want to hypothetically avoid pain. Therefore, we would want to avoid things that cause pain, right? Very primitive. Seeing the world as it is today, it would be fortunate if more people would at least reach this level of primitive fear of sin, right? There's something to be said for that, right? It's like when we're eating lots of processed sugar, like it would be great if our fear of actual diabetes was enough to motivate us to moderate these things. But also, because it's so far off, we don't see that direct, immediate connection between eating the sugar and getting diabetes. We don't feel even the fear of the negative consequences. So too with mitzvot and sin. It's like we feel like it's not like, lightning strikes you the second you eat the pork chop. Lightning doesn't strike you the second you steal someone's parking spot, or you accidentally walk out of the grocery store with a magazine and choose not to go back in and pay for it. Okay. We see a large number of people turn to alcohol and drugs, even legitimate drugs like food, are abused for relief of a discomfort of any type. And we see people who smoke, even with all the undeniable evidence of the disastrous long-term consequences by smoking. People risk their health and their lives with promiscuity. People overeat. We see this, that we allow violence and immorality of the television into our homes, ignoring the dangerous impact this has on our children. Gross abuse of the environment, even in the face of the warnings that our lifestyle is threatening the future of the entire planet Earth. The frightening things, there's no way to turn society around. Anything that threatens to deprive people of pleasure is rejected. I'll buy it, even if that action may receive lip service. Our culture is wedded to live for the moment. I believe we should settle for the fear of sin, which the Ramchal considers primitive. I'm interested, what are your thoughts on that? Should we be aspiring to the most primitive?
Primitive being like the chart.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great if I was motivated to be like that, but to aspire to it, I suppose, I don't know, aspire to it. Yeah, it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute.
You know, it's interesting, right?
Right.
It's interesting. Um, okay. I'll add one thing here. I was listening to the Tanya this morning and I shared it on my WhatsApp videos, my Instagram, that is interesting. He said in the Tanya this morning, in today's Tanya, that Hasidus sees sin and punishment or negative consequences not as punishment, but as corrective measures, as surgery. And you know, if you don't take care of your knees, you might end up needing knee surgery, and it's painful, and there's a long healing process, and you got to go through PT, and you got to go through a whole thing because you didn't take care of your knees. And that all sin is not taking care and treasuring the relationship between us and Hashem. And so when we break trust and we damage ourselves, there's no punishment from God, which is damage. There's only consequences that are the maybe messy consequences of correcting us, of healing us, of surgery and rehabilitation. And if you see what our brave soldiers are going through these days, how painful that process is, but also how much bravery and courage and an incredible self-determination it creates in a person. You know, if you saw the Israeli basketball team in wheelchairs just won the Olympic gold medal this week. So again, like it brings out sometimes this amazing inner strength in you having to go through this rehabilitation process, but it's avoidable in this situation of spirituality. Of if we take the opportunity when we make a mistake and we do tshuva, we're able to avoid having to have like an in-depth surgery. It's like, you know, when you have diabetes, if you're able to change your diet early enough, you don't have to have, you know, the surgery that puts in the insulin pump and lose a leg or whatever else like happens later. And even that is happening with God's compassion, which, you know, I like. I think that's something I feel like more motivated to aspire to in terms of self-discipline.
Yeah. And then also, you know, I've learned from, you know, my Chabad rabbi that when we die, the same thing is happening. You know, there isn't like there's corrective measures that happen on your soul after you die. So, and that's the process. That's what's happening. It's not like, okay, you didn't clean that up, so you're in trouble and you're going to burn. No, there's like a corrective process that happens after you die as well. And that to me is, yeah, that is much more, that's why I'm attracted to Hasidus.
Right. Ramchal is also writing to those who want to live a more spiritual life rather than those who are content with just being human beings who want to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. For them, motivation that is only for avoidance of harm is just another manifestation of self-love. And for those who have their ultimate goal in reuniting with God and value the self only for what it can do to bring them closer to God, there is a totally different concept of fear of sin, which is where we were going with Hasidus. The fear of sin we are now addressing is the overwhelming sensation of standing before the majesty of God when we have discussed as a component of Hasidus that it is not easily attainable because it's dependent on a profound understanding of the infinite majesty of God and the lowliness of man. The specific type of fear of sin, which goes beyond that even discussed under Hasidus, refers to the constant concern that even a hint of impropriety may have entered one's actions, whereas the sensation of the majesty of God occurs either at the time one's doing the mitzvah or praying, or occurs as a deterrent when one is confronted with the possibility of sin. The fear of sin we are now discussing is constant. A person is always on alert that nothing remotely related to sin should enter his behavior. And this requires a constant, unrelating vigilance before one acts and a reflection of one's previous actions. And this is why the term fear of sin is appropriate, because when you truly fear something, is constantly alert to avoid danger. So let's discuss this for a second, because this kind of sounds like a trauma response, if I'm being honest, right? To be so constantly vigilant and afraid and on edge doesn't sound appealing. And whenever I get into this state, I actually don't feel like it causes me to do better. I feel like it causes me to shut down, because I feel like there's no way I'm doing enough right to be at this level and this aware. And I feel, especially with the war, and you feel like every mitzvah matters so much, and every avera matters so much, and it's overwhelming. And this weekend I was talking with my brother, who's a rabbi, about it, and I said, I think it's because this book is written with men in mind. And I said, I'm not putting men down or like saying it's not appropriate for women to read this book. Of course it is. We're learning it. But I think that we need a little bit of a gentler. I think that when a mother is on high alert 24/7, she is not able to be the best mother that she can be. But a man, I think when he is on high alert in that, like, hunter-gatherer mode, I think that it's much more healthy in their biology and in their dynamic. So how do we see is the female archetype of this constant being in the king's presence? I'm interested what other people think. Like, what would we put out there?
I mean, really, I think when we're in our malchus state, that's how we do that. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, knowing in our heart of hearts that we really are daughters of Hashem. We have a special, unique relationship. We are, each of us, an Eshes Chayil. And, like you just said, we are not perfect. We're constantly processing and thinking about all of our children and what they're going through and what they're like, how they're wired, and, how we could best help them and all that kind of stuff. And it's that aspect of our being is, Hashem gives us, I feel like Hashem gives us a lot of breaks. I really do. And, so anybody who is doing their utmost to uphold Torah and mitzvot and, everything, like, I'm going to be like, for example, I was setting the table this Shabbos. It's just me and my son for Shabbos. And I was away last weekend and I let him just do Shabbos however he wanted to. And he's like, don't bother putting a tablecloth. Don't, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I let it go. But this time I'm like, okay, I'm home. I put the tablecloth. I made a nice dinner, and he thanked me for my efforts. That's what he said to me. Thank you for your efforts this week. And I was like, and thinking about it, when I'm alone on Shabbos, which I know is going to be few and far between once I get married, but it is a phenomenal. I'll tell you something, just to light candles and sit on the couch is like amazing. But would I do that if my son was there? No way. That's an example of our malchus state. So I don't know. I don't really have the answers, Lily. I'm just kind of giving you an example of how I'm feeling about the whole thing.
Yeah, I found that very inspiring, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening and typing in is also, and able to participate else through recording will as well. I think that there is a I think that when I feel the most supported that I make the best spiritual decisions as a woman. I think that when I feel fear and scarcity, I'm not going to make the best of decisions. I think when this fear in terms of sin is, I'm so afraid, I feel like it puts me too defensive. It doesn't push me to be even better.
Yeah.
It me feel defensive and like I better protect what I already know because I know I'm already screwed. And I think it's like that with food also, that when we also always have this deprivation mindset, skipping wine, more often feels like deprivation. And then we feel like, well, I'm never going to get this right. I'm never going to do this. It's just fear of any food, fear of any, even sugar, like fear of sugar doesn't make us be more careful with sugar.
Right.
Especially. But when we get to that cherished relationship with our body, I know this just doesn't feel good. Like this doesn't feel good. And I don't mean just in that same terms of self, but like the relationship between me and my body is hurt when I'm eating things that don't feel good. The relationship with Hashem is hurt when I'm not careful with my speech. But if I notice I'm not careful with my speech, we're really close. The same way, like I'm never going to be the perfect mother, but they say that it's not the mistakes you make, it's the hashlemut you do afterwards. It's the way you come back together and come back from your mistakes and give context that the relationship is always progressing. The same thing with trust. It's not that you always have to do everything perfectly, but it's that you own up when you let the ball fall through the cracks or whatever it is, however you say that, drop the ball, things fall through the cracks, that owning up to it then restores trust. Trust is when things don't work out, how you look at the other person, not only when things do work out and they do always do what they say they're going to do. So that perspective as a woman for me feels much more authentic. Okay, that's what tshuva is. Tshuva is always Hashem wanting us to make up.
Yep. Is somebody texting you? Not even looking.
Oh, I was looking at the chat to see what's happening, and I'm looking down at the book. That's what.
Yeah, no, I didn't even notice the chat. Okay.
Let's see. Okay. How do we gauge how much one understands the gravity of sin? Let's use an analogy. If a person has a minor ailment, say a cold, a muscle ache, a slight infection, he's likely to go to his family physician who is fully competent to treat these conditions. He has severe heart problem. Especially if it requires surgical procedure on his heart, he's not going to rely on his family physician alone. He'll consult the finest cardiologist available. Why? Because when the heart's involved, every minute error could be fatal. With many other illnesses, there's a much greater margin of error tolerable. Hence, one not need to be so concerned because small mistakes are not life-threatening. The greater the risk, the greater the precautions one takes. I view this analogy for people who bring questions about Judaism to rabbis whose familiarity with halakha is not of the highest order. Would they accept a similar level of competence if they were consulting a medical authority for a heart problem? Their answer is that my analogy is not valid because the questions they bring to the rabbi are not life and death magnitude. And this is precisely the point I wish to make. To someone who sees Torah and mitzvot as being the very essence of life, the alpha and omega of life itself, to someone who has his goal in life that posited by the Ramchal in the opening chapter, issues in Torah observance are very much a matter of life and death, and one seeks an authoritative opinion from someone comparable in medicine to the finest heart specialists. This can help us understand the Ramchal's category for fear of sin. Many people maintain limited vigilance over their homes, being satisfied with locked doors and windows. Others may install a security system with an alarm and automatic notification to the police. Banks who are at greater risk of being robbed have security guards, surveillance cameras, government buildings, and other establishments of possible targets of terrorist attacks have even more elaborate security. With cameras installed on all sides of the building, the security person constantly viewing 6 monitoring screens, constantly on the alert for anyone or anything that appears even remotely suspicious. A person who has concept of sin being harmful, and even one who has a concept of divine majesty which deters him from sin, will implement various degrees of watchfulness. The person who has developed the level of spirituality beyond, On the Hasidic mass, okay, the level of fear seems the faintest hint of sin will break one's defenses. Okay, how do we understand this? We don't want to be laissez-faire. Are we a house? Are we the bank? Are we a terror? Are we a terrorist target? What do we think?
I don't know. And I'm afraid to look at the news. I saw your post and I saw something else last night and I don't want to know.
I didn't post anything about the news.
Oh, you didn't? Somebody posted somebody posted something. I thought it was you in our group. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
a prayer before reading the news.
prayer
You
before,
post
not specific to today,
no.
but yeah.
No, I don't know. I feel like I'm dominating. Is Esther Bracha not able to speak?
It's okay. I appreciate it. I know where Lala and Shulamit and everybody else were. Okay.
Hi, Stacy. I'm just working. I can't.
Well,
I'm hearing
as
everything.
Hi.
we're just curious what you think about this, like living, like, I don't know. I find that really scary to live in a high security facility. I don't know how I parent and go through everyday actions. And the story he gives here about this rabbi who accidentally knocks into the table and one of the candles goes out and he's crying and crying and crying and is just unable to be consoled that the sin bothers him so much, even though it was unintentional. And this idea that sin begets sin, and if I do this, like what could happen next? I think that sin beget, I think that it's really scary. And I know because I feel this level of awareness since the war in a way I never felt it. And I don't know that it's always productive. Maybe it is. Maybe it's how things are supposed to be. We're in great times of great change. And I'm not saying that I don't know that I'm so much more perfect, but this awareness of the gravity of all of our behavior. Does anybody else feel like that since the war? Like,
I feel it in a different way. I like your way. Your way is the right way. I feel it in more of an anxiety way of how much longer am I going to be Zocha to do this? I better do it right.
so I feel like, right.
That's not coming from a healthy way, but it's definitely an awareness. It's just you take the war basically took away our sense of taking for granted, and in a way it was a very big gift, and it still is a gift because we're forced to appreciate everything that we are allowed to do. I mean, I find myself Erev Shabbos, or Motzei Shabbos after all my marrieds leave and they're rushing out the door to catch the various buses to go home and they're busy with their kids. And yes, of course they help. And of course they bring things to help make Shabbos and make things easier. But at the same time, I'll catch myself and I'll just say, oh my gosh, like, why did this happen? How come all different thoughts go through my mind and I stop and I used to get very upset. And now I find myself catching myself and saying, it's a bracha. You're home. You know where everyone is. Your kids are with you. You're okay. You're healthy. You're well. You're able to do this. There are a lot of people who can't. You're in a good situation. And it changes your whole perspective on everything in so many ways.
Exactly. I really think that it is. Like when I have free time, I feel very uncomfortable. I feel very, very uncomfortable. And like again, if I have something to read or an hour of free time, not a big deal. But I restarted my soup project. because I have clients that finished, and I haven't had like the same amount of new clients re-sign up since my clients who very successfully finished. Like, that's what you want. In the health business, I don't want repeat business, I want referrals. Like, thank God, like, amazing success, they're not coming anymore. But like, felt very uncomfortable with that time on my hands. Like, okay, I better restart my soup project. You can't waste that time. Like, that's precious. Am I using it? Am I using it well enough? Am I learning enough? Make sure what am I doing with that? What else should I be doing? And it's not coming from I'm not worthy if I don't do, but it's like every minute is an opportunity. Like,
I also find myself falling back into what we discussed in Safer Bitachon way back when, the could have, would have, should have. Like, had I known this when I was 20, had I done this when I was 30, and I sometimes hear myself like say, can I just go back to that time and like start over? And then I keep saying, no, where we're supposed to be, we are where we're supposed to be. And it brings it all together. And it's constant reminder. And the fact that we have this class on Sundays just grounds my whole week forward, and it helps me reflect on my past week without the guilt.
So glad. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, and to that point,
About, Stacey, right?
what did you just say, Esther Bracha?
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. And to your point, Lily, you had said to think about the breath, the exhale, that it comes from Hashem. And I really, all last week, I taught that in my yoga. It was amazing. So yeah, there's an effect. And this attitude of I'm not doing enough, I just have to say, I think, from one who was a constant doer my whole life, and I filled up every second doing something. My husband used to, at the time, I don't know, say negative comments about that. He's like, you never sit. And I'm like, okay, I just don't. I don't know. I mean, is that a bad thing? That's just, I'm a doer.
My grandfather used to always say, if Safta stops, I start worrying.
Exactly. So whatever you're doing is enough. Honestly, I feel like, it's the people who don't do anything. Lily, you do plenty. I hope that you go easy on yourself a little.
Dude, like I really feel tremendous blessed. Like, when I don't, in my business, you have more clients, you have less clients. You have times that are more busy, you have times that are less busy. I had time today to take an hour and a half nature walk.
Wow.
By the pool near the local Ma'ayan. Like, I take time for myself, but at least that is positive time, But I also had time to make soup and drop it off and have it roll out with my ADHD child, and that didn't go so well. And the other plus, and I'm going to help my other child learn for Bagrut tomorrow, and I found a therapist for that child today. So, like, whatever. We're all trying to do all the things, but there are times where, I get annoyed with Hashem sometimes, and I'm like, wait, but like, I have time. I could be helping people with this time. Like, send me people to help, right? Like Abraham Avinu at the tent. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm recovering, but it's boring. I have what to give. Give me someone to help, and I always find that it's almost always like I just have to sometimes put things out there, and then be patient, because I'll put something out there, and 2, 3 things, 4 things nothing will go. And I'll be like, okay, I'm not getting a message. And then if I keep just that space open and relax, and just be aware, then the opportunities do come, the opportunities do come. And then you realize, all of a sudden you get very busy, and then I'll want to commit to something, and the kids will need something, and my husband will need something. And I'll be like, so happy that I don't have, 8 clients back to back. And I can, and be
Exactly. don't forget, that Parnasa comes from Hashem. So there's a flow. And, if you're not getting it, then there's a reason why you need the extra time for your husband or whatever. Yeah.
That's a very nice point, Stacy. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just have to keep reminding myself when in those moments where nothing has happened yet, that this space is here for a reason. And so I look for things that are not long-term commitments to do in that time that then I'm always grateful that, then one kid comes home with lice, so that takes everything, sitting behind me is from the 5 boys, yeshiva boys I hosted for Shabbos, and like, that's a whole Sunday. If you have guests for Shabbos, like that's a whole Sunday to like put your house and everything back together. It's life,
But it's a bracha. There are so many people who are sick that would be loving to do that.
Exactly. Like I really feel like it's a huge blessing, and I feel very privileged. And but I feel with that privilege comes a big responsibility.
Totally.
Easy for me to cook dinner. I feel a responsibility then to offer to cook dinner for people who just had a baby and just did this or lost somebody or whatever, because it's easy for me to just cook double. It's not hard for me to do that, so to always remember there's always something that we find easy that for somebody else is like the biggest gift in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard. I think that there is hard having a heart disease where you feel like you need to be super on nutrition. That's not easy. And I think there's something hard to being aware of how important we are. What do they say? It's not that people aren't afraid of their not
Of their what? Of their what?
Aren't afraid of not being good enough. They're really afraid of their potential, because that would demand,
Yep.
talking about here is that when you understand your own power, the power of connection,
Comes responsibility.
Expectations.
Right.
and a princess, like you said, feels expectation than the daughter. Okay. I'm gonna finish up this chapter. This great Taurus. Okay. The stifler goat was very hard of hearing and had not heard a knock on the door. Sitting on bone without any books in his hand, swaying to and fro, mumbling to himself. Since he was clearly not praying, my friend was this is what he was doing. He took softly until he was close enough to hear the gun saying, Anima, me, I believe Shiboring, Ishbarach Shibor, that the creator blessed the who is the one. The disciple was reciting the 13 principles of faith in Hebrew, translating them to himself in Yiddish. This great Torah scholar who never let a moment pass without Torah study found it necessary to take time away from study to just reinforce his belief in God and the 13 principles of faith. Although he knew well, he never translated Yiddish for even greater impact. Many of us recite the 13 principles of faith daily. How many of us feel we need our faith reinforced daily? If one sees it doing so, one can begin to realize how important it is for people of lesser spirituality to take such moments. Lo Alman Yisrael, this is not correct with Tzaddik in a situation that his lives giving inspiration to us. We need only to look to them. And I don't know, I feel like that about, I don't know if you saw that one of our hostages who's still in captivity sent a message back to his mother with one of the hostages that was released on Shabbos, letting her know that he still counts the days of the week and says a blessing for Shabbos and is praying because his mother's religious and he knows how important it be to her. Not because he's not religious, but his mother's religious.
Yeah, not doing it for Hashem, doing it for his mother. It's cute.
But of course he's doing it for Hashem, but that's our father, right? He's our father. He's our mother.
Right.
I don't feel so connected to this mitzvah right now, God, especially now that connected to. There are things you don't feel connected to. You still have to do.
Right.
I know my mother's suffering for me. Let me say something like that is going to make her feel good. There's this
Right.
today's Tanya that Hashem is always with us. When we're in, Galut and we're suffering, he is stuck there with us. He is with us in the suffering. And so if we could do something to delight God, and I think that's, in our generation, we are very blessed we can learn from everybody. We can learn from the people who call themselves tzaddikim, and we can learn from the people who, for whatever reason, Hashem chose to make public. These people who Hashem chose to raise them up to our public family, to our public heart. My daughter brought up what a Gam said on Shabbat about that Hashem wouldn't leave her, in the pasuk that she wrote, and the pasuk that she kept with her, and that held her together her entire time of her captivity. And I think that it's just, in my mind, this entire time, I really envisioned God with every single one of them, holding their hand, kissing their forehead, like keeping them company through whatever they were going through. To see that so many of them felt it also.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank God.
Much in our daily lives, like you're saying, of like, you look at that tzaddik and you're like, well, if he needs to work on that, how much more so do I need to work on it, right? It's like, if somebody who has one pizza a day can count the days of the week and know it's Shabbos and know it's, and still in captivity, that's such a sending to the mom. I'm talking to Hashem. Do I really need to be complaining so much? Could I talk about things I did to delight him today, and a little less about my own worries and anxieties?
But we're still allowed to have those worries and anxieties.
Of course we are, because he's our mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to come to him with them. But within a character of appreciation, as we're going to see from all of these parshiot coming up in the daily portion of the Jews' complaints, there's a big difference between requests and complaints. I love you, God, so much. I love my life so much. Can I have more, please? Can I have more of this? Can I have more of this? Can I have more of this? Versus, you're not taking care of me. You're right. What the Jews keep saying? I'd rather go back to Egypt. I'd rather be a different nation. I don't want to be your servant. You're not taking good care of me. Versus, hey, I have a job to do for you. Can you please send me this and this and this and this so I can do the job? I feel like I'm not equipped here. I need your help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We are so close. Next week, we have 25 and 26. Oh, no, 26 is going to take us 2 weeks. We're going to have 25, start 26. Then the next week, we are going to be, so I think Rosh Chodesh, by Rosh Chodesh, we are going to be starting Shar Bitachon again.
Wow.
Amazing. So I just want to say my mother's first yortzeit is this Monday night. So the 20th of, yeah,
It's a year?
It's been a year. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So, if you could just, keep her in mind, I'll write her, I'll write her name on Monday night or Monday. It's the 20th of Cheshvan. I mean, it's Cheshvan?
No, Teves. Shvat.
Huh? Shvat, I mean, Shvat. 20th of Shvat. So yeah, I don't know why I said Cheshvan. Oh yeah, Cheshvan. I know why I said that. Anyway, if you could just keep her in mind, I will put it in. Thank you. Thanks, Lily.
Great week, guys.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.